Life. Welcome back. As you all know, my name is Russ, and I am super excited to have with us today Scott Torrey and Jeff Laliberte, the respective CEOs of Payfactors and PayScale. I got the order back there. Of course, Scott comes to this whole thing from the PayScale side, and of course, Jeff comes from the Payfactors side. And as I think many of you may have already heard, but if you haven't already, we are very excited to be joining our two companies together. And now we are going forward as a new PayScale, bringing together the best of what PayScale brought, along with the best of what Payfactors brought. And we thought it would be great, and these two gentlemen were kind enough to join us today to talk a bit about how this came to be. How did two companies that were essentially rivals and competitors, how do we come together and decide that the best course of action is to move forward? But before we get to all that, I'd love to start off with you, Scott. Can you give us a little background? What was your journey sort of coming to PayScale? How'd you get into compensation in this whole space?
Sure, Russ, and thank you for the introduction, and excited to be here. My journey's been a pretty direct one. I spent 20 years prior to joining PayScale with one company, a company called Concur Technologies. Concur had a focus on optimizing travel and expense management, which is the second most controllable expense in most companies' P&L. And when my time at Concur ended, I was looking for that next opportunity. And what's more powerful to a company's bottom line than paying people correctly? And so compensation was a natural draw and a natural attraction to go to. Putting my Concur time in a little context, over those 20 years, I was part of the executive team that grew Concur from when I joined about 200 customers to when I left, over 50,000 customers. Ultimately, when we transitioned out of that business, we sold it to SAP for a wonderful exit for the company as a whole and the employees that are still there. My journey was largely focused on three primary components of my career. First was the focus on the customer, focusing on how we deliver great support, great services, great account management from a customer experience perspective. The second third of my career was focused on how to build a great company. And I looked after roles like HR and facilities and IT and procurement with a real focus on how are we going to scale our company from 400 employees to, when I left that role, about 4,000 employees. And then the last third of my career was focused on growth and how are we going to take this wonderful platform we built in the US. I moved over to London and then built the international infrastructure to grow from about 12 million a year to over 180 million a year when I left that role. And so my time at Concur, I think, is well prepared to be part of this journey to continue to accelerate the importance of compensation, to continue to advance the products and services we're able to offer, and to help the combined companies grow to meet those needs.
Oh, fantastic. What a range of experience. And I can see why you running companies of those sizes and scale. I can see why you got very interested in compensation. That seems like sort of a natural place to start looking. Jeff, tell us a bit about your background, how you got started, how you got into compensation, and then how Payfactors sort of came to be.
Yeah, happy to do so, Russ. So I've been fascinated by the pursuit of truth in compensation since I was like 9 years old. My father owned and operated his own recruiting firm, and I'd overhear conversations where the candidate would have one number, and then, of course, the hiring manager would have a different number, and HR would, of course, have another number. And it made an impression on me. At that age, you think, everything should have a clear answer. So, what was the answer, right? Like, whose number was right? Where was the truth in all of that? And so, ultimately, a little later in life, I took an internship with William Mercer through an internship sponsored by the International Foundation of Employee Benefits and the Wharton School of Business. I got placed in Mercer's National Survey Group, learning all about data collection and statistics and reporting. I learned a lot about the strengths of traditional survey data collection methods, but also a lot about their fatal flaws and weaknesses. And by the mid-90s, I transitioned and started working for some of the big compensation consulting firms doing more plan design work, incentive plan design, executive compensation, salary administration for most of the same global brands that I guess we're fortunate to call our clients today. And then I moved into tech into 2000. And by 2013, I founded Payfactors with a few of my colleagues. We were generally fed up with the dearth of innovation in the category, frustrated by legacy, arcane data collection and reporting processes, and we were just very determined to, finally do something about it.
Excellent. Makes sense. And so today we have these two amazing organizations. They are, leaders in the market. We obviously bump into each other all the time. We are very passionate about our own products, but also respectful of the competition as good competitors would be. So I would love to understand, and I'm sure the folks listening to this would love to understand, how do two CEOs of highly competitive and successful companies, how do you guys sit down one day and talk about, maybe we should get together on this thing? I'd love, Jeff, how did that happen? How did it start from your perspective? And then I'd love to hear how Scott got into this.
Look, you have two really well-run companies here in PayScale and Payfactors, and independently, I think we shared a lot of the same values and interests and vision for the industry. I think we both recognized the magnitude of the opportunity in front of us, and I'm, to be clear, I'm defining opportunity as importance and impact, not necessarily dollars. We were independently pursuing very similar paths, to challenge status quo and accelerate change for the industry, and for, dare I say, humanity. And I think that we both realized that beating each other up in the market, fiercely sort of competing against each other and stealing business from each other was ultimately proving to be a detriment to industry progress and ultimately to our clients. And so I give Scott actually a lot of credit, all the credit in the world, for making the first move. He put himself on a plane and headed to Boston, and we put the competitive sort of bluster and puffery aside for a little while, and we just started having, I think, really meaningful, impactful conversations, riffing on each other's ideas. And I remember walking away from that first meeting both awakened and inspired.
So Scott, walk us through did you just sort of wake up one day and are like, I think I'm going to go fly out and chat with Jeff? What was the thought process there? How did that kind of come to be?
Yeah, Russ, listen, the 20 years I spent at Concur, there's some pattern recognition here, learning how important partnering up and aligning yourselves with other great companies is to the story, how fast that can accelerate the time to value, the kind of innovation you can bring to the market. And frankly, to Jeff's point, kind of the elimination of some of the friction that goes when two good competitors are going at it with each other. And so there's a couple of mental models I'd give, and then I'll give you a little more detail around the mental model that we had around this. Was there's absolutely no question that we were both pursuing very similar outcomes. And the core, using a sports analogy here, I grew up as a Celtic fan back in the 80s, and there's nothing I loved more than the rivalry of the Celtics and the Lakers, right? You would wait every day for that game to come on, and you'd see those two teams going at it. And there's just a passion and energy went into it. And frankly, I think when you look back on those two teams, it made each team better. They had to work harder on their off seasons. They had to get better during the season so they could all come together to battle it out. But only one team got to win at the end of that. And really the mental model I had with Jeff was, man, we could make each other better and we could continue to battle this out, and we'll continue to do good for both our companies and our customers. But what if we really combine the power of these two teams? And that was really the mental model. That was kind of the imagery that was powerful to me. And I was super excited that Jeff took the meeting.
That's awesome. And I love the thinking there. Let me ask you this. So it sounds like you both laid out a pretty good groundwork for why it would be really good for the organizations to get together and think about things a little differently and start rowing in the same direction as a group. Scott, since you just finished there, let's continue with you. As you think about what this means for HR and comp professionals, the folks listening to us right now, what does the union of these two organizations really mean to them? What are we putting together for them?
Yeah. Well, listen, I'm one of the newer, if you will, newer people to the compensation space. And so what I've certainly heard in my first year and a half is that things have changed so much, even in the last 12 months. And so never has the time been more real to take on a couple very big topics from a compensation perspective. One is, what does this pivot to remote work really mean to companies? What does it mean once we come out of this COVID fog to have a new normal? And how do we make sure that we have all the right software, data, and services to respond to this new challenge? And that's one pivot that is crystal clear to me that I think we're going to bring value to. The other one is clearly tied to the pressures that are rising both from a legislative perspective and importantly from a social perspective to truly take on the issues that are facing our country from a social and pay equity perspective. Those two topics represent the perfect time to be accelerating innovation to bring better software, better services, and better data to those problems and help accelerate each and every company's path to an answer.
The timing is really, really perfect. Jeff, from your perspective, and you kind of started us off today saying, you had these sort of visions about how comp could be different, how people could think differently. How does bringing this together allow your thinking on those sort of things to continue along and bring more of that to comp and HR professionals?
Yeah, I mean, I first and foremost, I could not possibly agree more with Scott. I'm not sure I could say it any better. 100% in agreement. It's also, to me, if I could add to that, it's about prescriptive recommendations and valuable insights. I keep going back to that elusive source of truth, right? And why, right? Because to me, compensation is a means to an end, right? It's all about leveraging the right data, not the generic data that everyone else and their uncle has access to. I'm talking about, data and insights that allow for meaningful differentiation in your talent strategy, right? We at PayScale, now combined, should have a meaningful and measurable impact, I believe, on your attraction and retention metrics, right? This is no longer about a box that stores your third-party legacy surveys, right? It's about evolution, right? And evolution in thinking, the evolution of impact, and the resources that we now have at our disposal. When I think about the combined skill sets, the depth and breadth of our capabilities, and the capital that we now have at our disposal to accelerate change, and perhaps most importantly, the decibel level of the client's voice, right? Like we've got 10,000 clients now. And our ability to actually digest and act on that voice, that's the stuff that makes the little hairs in my arms stand up.
Let me double click on that for a second, because I think it's those voices are the ones that are ringing in my ear as well. And it's the voice of the CEO that may be down in Silicon Valley that had this wonderful installed base of employees that are building great products for them. And they've kind of had a set routine. Every year, we grab the same data, we look at the same data, we decide how much we're going to pay this wonderful talent. And their whole world just blew up, right? That their world blew up from a number of perspectives. One is that talent is starting to disperse and it's starting to go in different locations. And two, they've woken up to the reality that they can start attracting talent from places they never imagined hiring from. They never dreamed that somebody in Arkansas would be a great member of their development staff. But if they're going to bring them on, do they have the tools? Do they have the information? And do they have the right paradigm to evaluate that and to bring them on in an effective way? And that's what's ringing in our ears and is accelerating our path to this solution.
That's fantastic. I think the little hairs on the back of my arm are standing up too, just thinking about all the possibilities. One thing, and that's fantastic, and I can imagine everyone listening to this is just getting really started thinking about the kind of things we're bringing together. And both of you mentioned sort of, helping support these tough decisions, making sure everybody's got the right information. That stuff, as we all know, starts with data, making sure the right stuff, and bringing these two organizations together. We're bringing together two really pretty amazing diverse and expansive data sets that are just going to really, I think, empower our clients. At the same time, they're asking us some of these questions around like, how are we thinking about bringing these things together? Am I going to be able to choose between the types of data I want to use? Is it all going to be blended? Am I going to know what I'm looking at? I kind of wanted to jump over to you on this one, Jeff, first. Like, what kind of direction are we giving the teams as they bring this stuff together? Like, are users really going to have full transparency to what they're going to look at?
It's a good question, Russ. I mean, and to be clear, Scott and myself and others are really digging into this topic right now. I think we've got really, at the end of the day, I'll give you my perspective and take on it. It's an embarrassment of riches on the data side, and not generic data, but again, highly differentiated proprietary data sets that really nobody else on the planet has access to. Period. Full stop on that. I think what's most exciting to me, without getting into specifics yet, is that these data sets represent different vectors of the market. Right. To me, it's all about triangulation and validation and trending. Right. It's about offering clients choice and perspective, and amplification. Again, honing in on that elusive source of truth, creating that competitive differentiation and advantage in our clients' talent strategies. And to me, I think what's really important is it's all about client choice and control. So while we've got a lot to figure out on the data strategy side, because of what we have in our possession, those are sort of for me, the guiding principles and the tenets. I don't know how Scott feels.
How do you think about that, Scott?
Yes, I think Jeff said it well. What I'd like to do, though, is pull up just for a second to give a little perspective that may be newer to some of your historical PayFactors listeners, because we actually have another constituent that's important in this data discussion, and that's the 100 million people that come to our website on a regular basis to both give and get data around what is happening within the compensation industry. We often refer to that kind of as the B2C market that we have available to us. And one of the filters that we apply there is we certainly aspire for PayScale to become the platform where when anybody wants to ask the question, are you being paid fairly, whether you're acting as an employee or an employer, you ask one simple question: have you PayScaled it? And so within that context and that vision of PayScale becoming a verb that is a source of truth for all compensation data, we have a tremendous platform upon which we're able to take published data, company source data, what has historically been called the peer data, and the crowdsourced data, and with complete transparency and complete openness about where that data is coming from, be able to serve that up to meet the different needs of the audiences that are consuming it. What I'm particularly excited about is the fact that post this integration, we will start with over 43 million jobs or employee information about 43 million employees, representing over 10,000 companies, which when you extrapolate all that together represents over 1/3 of the entire US population. That is a tremendous platform in which to start the discussion about whether people are being paid appropriately or not.
Yeah, I think that's a very powerful message. I love the scope of data that's now available to our clients, that will be available to our clients. I love Jeff's point about the vectors. You can get a complete picture. You can get a picture, as you say, Scott, from employees who are saying what they are paid or what they would like to be paid versus what employers are actually paying. You get the full picture of what's going on in the market and really be able to start making some of those tough decisions we were talking about earlier, and really getting the full insights you need, which I think is, again, little hairs are standing up. One other aspect that a lot of our clients talk about a lot is many of our clients and from both our organizations are very large and they're very complex, and they require a lot of help from folks with the complex expertise that our companies bring to the table to get sort of the most out of these sort of situations. And service and support has always been sort of core to helping these complicated organizations. As we move forward together as a new combined org, how are we thinking about providing service and support? Is that something that's still core to our thought process from both organizations? Scott, how are you thinking about that?
Russ, I'd go back to one of my opening comments was around my background. I came up from a services background, grew up in consulting, and then the first foundational years of my time at Concur were to build a trajectory so that when we serve 50,000 clients, it was with tremendous satisfaction, tremendous net promoter scores, and a real affinity, so that when people talked about what do you do for compensation, they say you can't think of anything but using Concur. I bring that same mindset to this opportunity. And what's fantastic is that we have an abundance of riches in terms of talent. And that talent really comes in two forms. One, people. And those people have a real sense of what the customers need and how they will need it, but also a passion for applying technology to solutions that can accelerate the time to value and accelerate the solutions out there. And so one of the examples I give there is we have we're trying to attack the challenge of the survey season. I know nobody loves it. I know it's a challenge for everybody. And so the more we can do to take the steps, the activities, and the agony out of that process, the better. If it's with people, that's one thing. If it's with technology, it might even be a better thing. And that's kind of how we think about it.
Fantastic. Jeff, what are your thoughts on that whole aspect of how we help our clients?
On the service and support? Yeah, I mean, look, I think our dirty little secret at Payfactors was recognizing early on that truly great service was as elusive as great data, and equally as powerful. We had, Russ, as you remember, we had just a terrible internal marketing acronym for it, SAD, service as a differentiator. But our philosophy was that, outstanding service ultimately drove retention rates, and retention rates drove continued R&D investment and product roadmap, which in turn drove higher client retention rates. Right? You get the idea. It was highly effective. I think we've systematically operationalized service. It's in our DNA sequencing, and as you just heard Scott talk, it's in their DNA as well. And so it'll be in our collective DNA going forward. If anything, I see the service components of our offerings being elevated.
Fantastic. So one last thing, thank you both again for the time. I know we're going to run a little long here, but I wanted one more question before we go. As you kind of shared your vision for why we'd come together and sort of we talked a lot about the near-term opportunities, some of the near-term problems facing comp and HR folks today that this union now helps a lot with. We talked about the fact that there's going to be, this great data set that we should be able to get into their hands, relatively rapidly and get them using that sort of stuff. But what are some of as we think about the future and as we sort of end today, what are some of those long-term implications for this? I mean, how do we really think about this union really changing the way people think about compensation and talent strategy and talent management? Jeff?
Yeah, Russ. I mean, I think long-term, trying to keep this brief, improved ROI on all human capital management decisions, development of differentiated talent strategies, as I referenced earlier, significant improvement in attraction and retention metrics, enhanced productivity of employees, and ultimately, I think, improved company performance. And how? Well, it all starts with the right data, prescriptive recommendations, and insights. I think, the elimination of information asymmetry between employer and employee is also very important, which means more transparency, more communication, more education, more involvement at the employee level, and then super cool tools and predictive analytics for managers.
Well, we all want super cool tools. Scott, what are your thoughts here?
I'd pivot off that word transparency, and really our role in helping elevate that discussion around compensation. That's not only happening in the board level, it's happening within all exec staffs and throughout all management ranks. This pressure around what do we do in the new normal with remote work? What do we do to more effectively address some of the social issues and pay equity is all driving and encouraging us to invest in new and different ways. And so if I were to kind of double click on where I think some of those investments are going, largely it's going to be around combining this wonderful, rich data with other elements of the HR process to add value. How do you merge job descriptions and compensation into a single business process so that it amplifies the message of what we're doing? How do you consider bringing in skills? how does that affect your recruiting process? So your total talent management is constantly informed and instructed, not just by compensation, but those factors that influence compensation and that compensation influences. And so we invite all those comp professionals out there to continue to remind us of what's important to you. What is the data that you wish was combined with your compensation data? And Jeff and I are here to make dreams come true.
Awesome. Well, that's fantastic. And what a great way to end it, Scott. If you want to let us know what you want your dreams to come true to be, please go ahead and reach out to us. You can send us email at coffee at well, now it's payscale.com, but the Payfactors one still find us as well. Coffee at payscale.com, or reach out to us on Twitter at Payfactors or Payscale, and we'll get those as well. Scott and Jeff, wanted to thank you both again today for joining us, and thank you for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Cheers, Russ. Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Comp and Coffee is a Payfactors production dedicated to the compensation community. We welcome your feedback. Send email to coffee@payfactors.com, tweet us at Payfactors, or share your thoughts in our Payfactors community tile. Until next time, keep your coffee hot and your data fresh.